All right, Ross. Tell me about Ross and tell me about Kosmos. Tell me about how we arrived here.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Ross Griffin and I'm from Limerick, West Limerick to be precise. Grew up on a farm out there. My parents still farm. I studied in LIT, as it was known back then, in Limerick. Did a construction studies, I think diploma is what it was called, and then a measurement and estimating. Ended up working with CISC on a placement in Galway as an estimator or a support estimator or trainee estimator. And actually didn't go back to Limerick. My intention was to go back and finish off in quantity surveying, but Reading in the UK was doing the College of Estate Management at the time. And there you could do distance learning. This was in 2001, 2002. You could do distance learning as a quantity surveyor. But also because I had the qualifications before that, I could just top up. So I ended up doing that, working with CISC for a number of years as an estimator, then moved to a company called Lang O'Rourke, who had set up here in Dublin from the UK as an estimator as well, set up their offices in Galway. Then went from estimating to site as a quantity surveyor on site. So at that point, I think it was about 8 years as an estimator, then on to quantity surveyor as a site.
Do you think all QSs should work as an estimator for a while?
Absolutely, because it's the basis of calculations and all contract sums, basically. Yeah. So if you don't know the approach to it, then you struggle to manage it, I would say. Yeah. I think we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. Financial crash came and an opportunity came up in Copenhagen in Denmark. There was a Danish contractor and CISC on a joint venture working on the design, build, finance and operate tender for the National Concert Hall here in Dublin. Most people here in Ireland will recognise that never happened. There's talks about it actually happening again, which is super cool. But I went out there for 6 months with the Danish contractor, and that was an eye-opener on the international market. Zero cost managers and quantity surveyors in the Nordic at the time. There was what we now know as the Nordics and data centres and pharmaceutical wasn't really happening back then in 2009. So I ended up working with the Danish contractor for kind of 4 years in Denmark as their chief estimator for their international projects. So they used to do harbours, airports, cement factories, you name it. And we won a project in Azerbaijan, a football training academy for Gabala FC. And I ended up going there for a year actually, living in Gabala, living in Azerbaijan, myself and my wife, which was really cool for a year, up in the mountains, 2.5-hour drives out of Baku. Came back to Ireland in 2013. The market was still kind of quiet back then, and an opportunity came up to go back to Denmark with an engineering company called Covey, which I did as a cost manager, quantity surveyor for the local market this time.
Now I'm just going to, there was no cost manager / QS job description in Denmark.
If you went online, you wouldn't have found one.
Did you create a kind of a role for yourself when you got into that place?
Yeah, so they had, the company at the time working on the international market had some QSs working for them, the likes of in Jamaica, Trinidad, Tobago, that type of thing, because they were dealing with the World Bank and the European banks and FIDIC contracts. So they had them, but in the local market itself, there was very few at the time.
So what did they do? How did they keep cost on track if they didn't have QSs?
It was the role and responsibility of either the engineer or the architect. Okay. So as an educational stream, you came out of engineering or architecture. All project managers would either come out from engineering or architecture. And kind of historically, it was always the architect's function. But then as engineering grew, it became the engineering did the engineering and the architect did the architecture. And so in the entire project life cycle and the contractual structures, it's very fragmented. And the responsibility moves with the contracts. So from a client's perspective, they don't know the quality they're getting, they don't know that there's no standardization, there's no methods, there's no method of measurement, for example, like ARM in Ireland or NRM in the UK. So all of that kind of shows a kind of a low quality in comparison to the professionalism behind the QS discipline. So between the period of 2014, January, and kind of the end of 2018, working for a big engineering company, but we were seeing now some movement in the market. So foreign direct investment is coming in, data centers has started, the markets had opened to investment from the US and the UK and Europe, etc. And an awful lot more QSs and cost managers were coming in, servicing kind of international clients, not necessarily the local market. But the local market kind of recognized this discipline and were questioning it more. So we seen an opportunity, a gap in the market. There was no QS practice, Danish QS practice, might I add. Garden Theobald had an office in Copenhagen for quite some years. Now Aurora, and we know the guys super well there, you know. But there's no Danish, there's no indigenous local language, all of that kind of stuff. So we set up the first Danish cost management consultancy in Denmark back in 2019 called Kosmos. Myself and two of my colleagues from previous company set that up. And the ambition there was that we would service the local market and then the Nordic market with digital cost management. But we came back to Ireland in 2019 to Galway to the BIM gathering that CETA set up every 2 years. And we were quite surprised by the level of maturity around BIM in particular, but more importantly from the QSs. There was very few QSs in the room talking about BIM. Actually, there's very few QSs at the conference, period.
Yeah, because BIM for years was like an adjunct. It was a thing that you plugged in. It wasn't, you know, seamlessly integrated across all of the functions of the project.
Exactly. It was
so the BIM people were the BIM people, and they were over here, and they were kind of in a silo.
And a bolt-on kind of service.
A bolt-on,
yeah.
And people used to be like, "Oh, we need the BIM. You know, we need to get the BIM guy in," and the BIM guy in would do his piece, do his spiel in an interview or a post-tender interview or something. But the senior management and the senior leadership didn't really understand how important it was.
No, and there's two challenges to that. I think from an Irish context, one was we were all looking at the UK and the disaster of BIM level 2.
Yes.
And the fact that was not at all integrated, but that was because it wasn't legislated. So if we compare, so in that conversation in Galway, at this point we were already operating at about 7 or 8 years in a very high level, what we consider a high level of BIM in Denmark, because the Danes had their first BIM mandate in 2007.
Okay, and was it mandated for public buildings or for,
So public buildings in the same kind of process that we now have in Ireland.
Yeah.
So this over time it dropped in terms of the project value that you needed to now operate BIM on in public projects.
And was it mandated for the subcontractors as well?
So
how do they do that?
It's the natural evolution of it all is that the public authority mandated. This is the natural evolution of BIM. It's why it's taken us now until like 2024 to actually really start in this country. The public authority have to mandate it because they're the biggest developer in the country.
Yeah.
And they can police it across all typologies and projects. And it starts then with the architect and engineer, because in the kind of olden days, BIM was building information modeling, 3D model, design, and everybody looked at it that. And so the first stakeholder to be engaged in building information modeling was actually the design team, architect, engineer. And then that naturally evolves into kind of the contractor, because the contractor manages execution. Obviously, you're handing over the responsibility into the execution phase. That makes sense. The next kind of cohort of stakeholders to the table are the consultants, the quantity surveyors, the project management consultants, the client advisory team, etc. They now build their knowledge base. So this natural evolution of BIM, I would say. But the people, the stakeholder to grab it on to it the most were the contractors, because they could see the value in efficiencies that it could bring for them in the execution. More efficiency, higher margin. And the design team were doing it because they were kind of contracted to do it. But what we've noticed in Denmark is as the years went by, the design teams also were able to realize the efficiencies in it. And this is kind of super interesting because a natural evolution of it over a decade you can see. So when we came back to Ireland in 2019, we went, holy shit, like what's going on here? Like, why haven't we done this? And I moved back in the beginning of 21, middle of COVID. That's a long story. That's another podcast. And we set up in Limerick, where I'm from, and we began to engage with the local market, with CETA, the SCSI, and companies like that.
So you set up Kosmos
Ireland.
Ireland.
Yeah.
Okay.
A subsidiary of Kosmos.
Yeah.
Or
where is it? Is it Copenhagen?
Copenhagen.
Copenhagen.
Yeah. It's a lovely city. Like, you know, it's beautiful. If you have you been?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
amazing city.
I love going back there. I go back there now every month or every 2 months, you know, because of the business.
I just love up there. I love cold and the dry cold and the snow. I love all that. That suits me. I think there might be a bit of a Viking.
A Viking,
somewhere.
Exactly.
But yeah, so you were established in Copenhagen, and you were probably getting a lot of public work because it was mandated. The BIM was mandated, and people understood the digital.
Yeah, but quantity surveying, no.
Okay.
So cost management, quantity surveying, no. So how we continue to service the industry in Denmark is we would partner with the engineering and architectural companies, and then under the standard contracts out there, we would service that contract with cost and management. But we're on myself and the partners kind of discuss this, and our team discuss it now, is that we're on a lifetime educational journey. In the Nordics, it's an educational journey to kind of let the market understand, or make the market understand the value in having this specialist discipline.
Yeah.
What we've been doing in Ireland and the UK for 150 years. And that's an important part of the journey, because projects are more complex, they're larger. And our kind of question always to clients is that if you operated a business that was, let's just say smallish, 10 million, 15 million euro, I would say small, who would do your financials for you? Would you do your financials yourself? Would you have your admin support do your financials? Would you have your business development manager do your financials? Would you have other people in your organization doing financials? Because no, of course, we would have our accountants, or we would have our accountant partners. I mean, okay, but you're about to start a 100 million euro project. And what you're telling me is that you're going to do your financials, or your project manager is going to do your financials, or your architect going to do your financials. Yet they're not trained and educated in it. Does that not raise an interesting question? And so that journey we've been on now for the last kind of 7.5 years, and we will be on it for the rest of our career. Absolutely.
Who are your clients?
So we've public sector and private sector at 50-50 split.
Okay.
Because we are a Danish company and we speak Danish and we deliver our projects in Danish.
You speak Danish?
I did, but not many people speak Danish in Limerick, and so it's
you don't get to practice.
It's challenging to practice, exactly. But when I go over, there's an engagement always in Danish and so on. But
they all have perfect English.
They do. That can be a good thing and a bad thing if you're trying to learn the language. Of course, it's difficult for you to learn.
Their English is better than your Danish, so it defaults to.
Their English is better than my English.
I know.
Never mind my Danish better than my English.
I know.
And so 50% are public authorities, and public authorities like the equivalent of the OPW, kind of South Dublin County Council, TII, kind of the big asset owner.
What kind of a size of projects do you offer your service on?
We always said that the average size of our project is about 50 million euro.
Okay.
But we like it big and we like it complex.
Okay, so tell me about the service you offer on these big complex projects.
Sure.
Tell it to me. What are the benefits to the projects? If the public sector have bought into it, if they're buying into it, it must be a very good
So I'll give you an example actually. So the equivalent of the OPW in Denmark called Bygningsstyrelsen, buildings management. They operate all the public authority buildings. A number of years ago, they had a couple of projects go really bad. We're talking about 8-10 years ago, really bad. And so they legislated that any project over 100 million Danish krone, that's 10-13 million euro, needs to have peer due diligence at each gateway by a cost manager quantity surveying practice. So up until a number of years ago, that was done out of the UK by UK companies because there was no one in country that could do it. And we won that framework, the 4-year plus 1 framework 1 year ago. And what that means is that in all major projects, this is for buildings, the roads authority and the prisons, they will bring us in to do a peer due diligence. A peer due diligence is where we would take the design material, we would estimate the cost of that design at that stage. We would then make recommendations, kind of risk mitigation, etc., for the project if our assessment was over the budget that was allocated to the project. What that does is it protects the client somewhat before they move into the next stage, because it has someone look at the project and go, yes, it's good to go, or no, you have a problem in these areas, we suggest this. And what that does for the public authority, it gives them confidence that, well, first of all, it's legislated, so they have to do it, but also gives them confidence that someone with a skill set that specialise in this are looking at their project. And that's super interesting, because what's happening is that once we do the peer due diligence, then the client is going, we really need you on the project full time. How would we make that work? And so
you come in as a kind of a external assessor.
Yeah, exactly.
Unbiased.
Completely.
Yeah. And then once you get the foot in the door, they realise the value of this, and then they want to keep you.
Exactly, because
keeps everybody honest.
But it's also an alternative kind of perspective on the project.
Okay.
Because if you're a designer, you're design focused.
Yeah.
If you're the client, you're focused on the project.
Oh,
if you're the project manager, time and quality. And so who really is looking at the commercial aspect, unbiased? And so that's what our offering is really in the local market.
Because it's cost versus value all the time. This is the conversation I have so often in the construction industry. People tend to focus rigidly on cost and inputs and not focus on the value and the outputs.
That's just
especially when they're signing off marketing budgets.
Yeah, it's just a legacy. It's a legacy piece. Because from an Irish perspective, intergenerational trauma, all of that stuff, because we never owned anything and so on, we are always looking at cost, but we look at it from what is the cheapest we can get that product for, as opposed to value. And the thing about the contrast that I realized after 12 or 13 years living in Denmark is the Danes look at value. So they would be happy to pay a couple of €100 for a jacket that lasts them 5 and 6 seasons, rather than €40 for a jacket that lasts them 1 season.
Yes.
Because they get longevity out of it.
Yeah, they buy like a new Saab. Well, they don't buy Saabs anymore, but they buy a new Saab and have it forever, for 20 years.
That's the case. It's quality and longevity and all of that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we haven't transitioned to that yet in Ireland, especially in the public sector. So our public sector, if you look at our schools and our schools rollout, we look at cost first,
the cheapest.
Design later, where the Danes look at design first because of the impact it has on the children and their education, and cost is secondary. And that's a super interesting mindset to have.
I was talking about this to somebody the other day. It's because we were a colony for so long, and then we had the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church, delivered schools and healthcare, and we were kind of infantilized by that. Yeah. Whereas if you look at France, arguably we're probably a richer country on paper now than France, but we don't have centuries of being rich.
No, and that's it. We're not a centuries old nation. That's the thing about it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at Denmark, it's been around for an awful long time and has kind of ruled certain countries and so on as well. But they have been a nation for a very long time.
A nation of grown up.
And wealthy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you compare the two of them, Denmark's in his 30 or 40s and we're still kind of in the early numbers of the 1s and 2s and 3s, like we haven't learned to walk yet, really, as a nation, because we're so young. Yeah. It's a very important kind of part.
As somebody
to it,
said, we're like kids with pocket money. We've got pocket money, but we're just not really empowered to know how to spend it properly or to spend it efficiently or invest it properly.
Exactly.
So so we kind of know how you got to where you are. Who are your clients in Limerick? Those are your clients in Denmark. Who are your clients in Limerick?
So we work for a company, we like the OPW and South Dublin County Council.
Yes.
Something that's very important about our business that I need to kind of share is that we're a cloud-based consultant. So we're not driven by locality. If a client needs us to have bums on seats, generally we will try not to work for them. We want to offer a digital solution. And what that means is that from a cost consultancy perspective, we want to hire the best people. I don't care where they are. We've a guy coming on in Mexico, we've a guy in Dubai, we have people in Portugal, Spain, UK, and they're managing our projects in Ireland, Denmark, kind of Americas, Asia. And so I think that is what's going to be the biggest revolution in the construction industry, is actually remote teams delivering projects. And we also focus heavily on pre-construction, because that's where all the bad decisions are made.
And the good ones.
And the good ones. And actually they're only realised in the construction, the execution phase, whether it was a good decision or a bad decision. Both are realised. Good decision, smooth flow. Bad decision, oh shit. And so we focus heavily on that pre-con phase, and actually we try not to work on the execution, and only if it's in our backyard, and only if the client is open to the idea that our remote teams can manage it remotely. They don't have to be bums on seats. That's a key part to us. So the OPW, to answer your question, South Dublin County Council, Sport Ireland, John Paul Construction, kind of the higher level, I would say, public authorities, and we're also tendering for, the metro and the other infrastructure projects. We're working on 2 metros in Copenhagen, so we've a lot of that experience,
In one sentence, what are they buying from you?
An alternative approach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Clearly. But what are they buying from you? What's the outcome they're buying from you?
Yeah, what I think they're buying is success, actually, and security and confidence. So some of the conversations we're having is that, okay, capital works management framework requirements. You have BIM requirements, you have ICMS, International Cost Management Standards, you have LCA, Life Cycle Assessment, Carbon, have now come into Ireland, starting, as we mentioned earlier on, January 24, and that kind of descaling of that down to, I think it's €2 million. And some of the clients have tried it. They've written stuff into their tender. They've brought consultants on board. They've brought their contractor, but they're not seeing any difference or value in what they're receiving. So even though they're asking for it, they're getting nothing different.
So you're not a traditional QS firm. You sit on the org chart on the design team, correct?
In some projects.
But are you like a contractor in others?
We sit with
or a consultant, or
we actually all of the above. So
yes.
We sit next to the client
Yeah.
as a development partner. We sit next to the architects and engineers as a delivery partner. We sit next to the contractor as, if it is project related, as kind of claims, contracts, general QS, but also.
So if there was like a bunch of circles, so it's no longer a hierarchical kind of family tree style of org chart anymore.
No.
It's circles that are integrated, and you're kind of in the middle, you're like a Venn diagram.
Yeah, because the information and process on a project life cycle in how we deliver it is identical. And so it doesn't matter if you're working for the contractor, the design team, the client, how you set your project up, what you require is the same.
I get it.
It's only the different stakeholders deliver different information at different times. But the process is identical, regardless of whether it's a hospital, a tunnel, a road, a school, a church. Doesn't matter. And that standardization is key to us delivering capital works projects or delivering efficiency. Because right now we view projects as linear. There's a start, there's an end. What we do is we bend that and try to connect and go, where projects are circular. And so they start and they finish, and when you finish, you feed all of that data into the next one, and suddenly you have this upward spiral of quality that keeps going up and up and up and up and up.
It drives, it's got a sort of a, what's the word, exponential effect.
Exponential in quality, but also exponential, I would say, in how we deliver. So I had a conversation with a Danish architect last week when I was in Copenhagen, and they were saying they're doing some work in the US, they've done some work in the UK, and he said the process to build there is probably 50% longer, and when we say build, design period and construction, than it is in Denmark. And I'm going, okay, that explains a lot in terms of the inefficiencies, and I can, the planning process and all that in Ireland. But inefficiency is expensive.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that our housing is so expensive in Ireland, because it's inefficient in terms of the delivery model. And then I was chatting with him, and what they're doing, this particular architect, is they're going to the US selling a different process to delivery. And that process shrinks time, gets the product quicker, and reduces all of this wasted opportunity during the pre-construction phase around decision making and gateways and multiple approvals. If you trust the system, we won't need any of that stuff.
So I'm TII. I have to deliver the metro. Okay? What are you going to do for me that's going to make my delivery of that metro more streamlined?
What if I told you, and this is a 10-year project, what if I told you, we need to decide now what it is you want at the end, and then we work backwards from that to establish what the reporting is, what the structures of information flow are, and this is on the project. And then you'd identify who in your life cycle is going to do that at different stages, because responsibility shifts depending on which stage of the project you're at to which stakeholder is in that period, from kind of consultant, lead consultant, to design team, to contractor, to subcontractor, to sub-supplier even. And that I don't think we tease out enough for our capital projects. Actually, I don't think we know what it is that we want.
Yeah.
What we're doing is just kind of, it's almost rolling the snowball in front of us, and then we don't know how big it's going to get. We don't know when it's going to end. We don't know what we're going to collect. And in reality, that should be crystal clear to us before we start any project.
It sounds so logical when you say it that way.
It does, but a guy once said to me, where there's chaos, there's cash. And I went, where there's chaos, there's cash. Where projects become so chaotic, the only solution we seem to have
is to throw money at it.
Throw money at it. Legal. This is where claims come in, and arbitration and conflict is just, they're so chaotic. And in reality, the industry itself is making money from this. So the legal industry, the consultancy industry, we're making money from that, because if you asked any of the consultants working, so kind of what percentage of your turnover is based on this chaos piece, and what percentage of your turnover is based on strategic advice and information quality review and delivery to prevent that? And most people kind of, and I'm generalizing here, of course, and we'll have, like, I'm not saying that all consultants operate this way.
Don't come for us now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Blindsight.
I'm just saying generally. Like, even if you look at the data center industry, where do we put most of our commercial team? All in the execution. What if I said to you could deliver it without any of them? What does that do then? What does that do to consultants' structure?
Now I know what they're buying from you.
Yeah.
Now I know what they're buying from you. Now you've answered the question. And it's the only reason I understand this so well is because this is exactly what I do in marketing. I look at a lot of marketing agencies and they do the exact same thing. They don't have an end point. They don't have an end goal. Nobody has taken the time to go, why are we spending this money on a website? Why are we spending this money on a video? What are the outcomes? We understand the inputs, we understand the cost, but do we understand the outcomes and the value? Has anybody taken the time to workshop that with us? Okay, now I understand what you're buying. I hope everybody else does as well. Okay, so public procurement. Let's talk about public procurement. You're doing, say, 50% of your turnover is public
it is,
works?
yeah, at least in Denmark. Yeah. I would say in Ireland.
Let's talk about Ireland, because that's the question I have for you. Public works in Ireland are still largely awarded on lowest cost. Is that controversial?
Absolutely.
You've said price tends to trump culture, collaboration and people when we were having our conversation to prep for this. From a public authority's point of view, what is the real cost of that lowest cost mindset? And what would we have to change in how tenders are scored, e-tenders I'm imagining, before quality and carbon, we'll come to carbon in a minute, actually count? So when we say quality here, what we're talking about is efficiency.
Yeah, and the technical delivery and the team and all of that. What if I said to you, cost doesn't matter and we shouldn't score it at tender? So it shouldn't.
Everybody would have a heart attack.
It shouldn't even be on the meet criteria.
Everyone would have a heart attack.
Most economically advantageous tender.
The word economic does not necessarily mean cost or commercial.
It has nothing to do with cost.
Yeah.
But
that's how people interpret it.
We're trained and educated as QSs to focus 100% on cost.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. During the week, we got a price from a consultant in our own business to do some work for us. And it's interesting. One of our guys went back and said, can we get a discount? And I said, stop it. No discounts. Why are we asking for a discount when we believe in the value we're getting? Why not just pay the fee?
As a salesperson, I haven't done my job properly. If you don't understand the value, you're coming to me looking for a discount, you're comparing me with another. You've got 3 tenders sitting on your desk and you don't know the difference my one offers. Yeah. So it means I've done a bad job of my sales.
So what's interesting here actually is that one of the metros in Copenhagen, they took price out of the equation and they tendered the project on quality, technical capability, the team that you're putting forward and the relationships that you would have with them, and the contractor's ability to deliver what was their key criteria was the reduction of carbon by 50%.
Okay.
Price wasn't even in the meet criteria. Now, this is where we should be shifting. for our major capital projects.
But most Irish tenders would purport to measure those things. But yet, when they're scoring them, they score the cost.
Even if price is
80% goes to cost and 20 goes to technical or whatever it is.
Some of them at the moment we're seeing tenders come back where price is 30-40%.
Right.
But the thing about it is, lowest price gets the highest points. And
that trumps everything.
And that's a mathematical equation. Whereas everything else, technical, the team, the quality, the capability, our interaction in any of the meetings that happens, that's subjective.
Okay.
So the price always matters if it is on the table. Because you can alter the other scoring criteria depending on, and you'll have your favourites, your bias going in there, regardless of whether you say you're not biased and you score fairly, you're biased. If you know someone in the room, you're biased. So what if we were to reduce and remove costs completely from it, and we did it, and everybody had, in the client organisation, had an opportunity to review and score. So it's not one person, architect doing technical and the project manager doing capability, but everybody. And suddenly you build a matrix and you mix it. And then it's multiple people that are scoring the criteria, and you get the fairest option out of that. And price will be whatever it'll be, because most prices are based on a couple of things: the capability of a client to make decisions and the project management of the delivery of the project. That's what it is. So if you don't have the right people in the room, how can you get the right price? And
is it based on somebody's notional idea, somebody with a spreadsheet who's decided what the budget is? But they all go over budget anyway.
That's inefficiency at the end of the day. You can argue that the budget is right at the time it was prepared.
Yeah.
But the budget itself needs to be managed extremely closely to be able to achieve, first of all, your design output on budget. What often happens is design runs, and then we do another budget update and we realize, oh shit. Rather than incremental, very collaborative, very integrated commercial and design evolution, which is kind of what we promote.
So, again, controversial, but say New Children's Hospital, it's kind of commonly accepted the design wasn't frozen, and, unfortunately with advances in, medical technology and the machines and everything, the design had to be, it couldn't be frozen, and it had to be continually evolved as the building took place.
Yeah.
What would you have done to manage that differently? What would have you had in your process that would have mitigated that sort of
ballooning,
bulging?
if you like.
Yeah, ballooning. Yes.
I often wonder when I hear the report, actually, is it the same product? Are we buying the same product that was originally budgeted
that
for?
we set out to build?
The answer is probably no.
Not. Yeah.
But all we're doing is looking at two numbers that are unrelated to each other, going, what the hell happened?
Yes.
So what the hell happened?
Yes.
So why can't that be answered? And I mean answered honestly and publicly. Are we buying more square meters? Are we buying more complexity? Are we buying a higher grade of efficiency and machinery in the hospital? And if we're going yes, 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 then we go, great. So we've got value for the money we spent. Mm-hmm. But if the scope day one is the same scope that we're getting now for 3 times or 4 times that original budget, we have a problem, because we're not getting greater value, we're not getting greater technology, we're not getting greater square meter. So if I was to say that the project evolved in the sense that we bought more, then what you need there is a bulletproof change management process that is almost real time, because you can't manage change in an analog way in a dynamic system or dynamic project you're talking about, that technology changes so quick, meaning that the design needs to be dynamic. But if the design needs to be dynamic, so does the delivery, so does the reporting, so does the control. And you cannot have a dynamic cost control process in the traditional manner in which QSs operate. You can't have people manually measuring. And when I do this as a ruler from my olden days, but it's 2D on-screen measurement, you can't do it when a project like the Children's Hospital probably has something in the region of 7,500 drawings. You just can't do it. So it has to be a digital workflow in order for you to be able to control that and give real, like I use real time, but actually you're always lagging behind a couple of weeks, giving real time updates and looking at impact on change. Now, that might have happened on the project. It absolutely might have, but it hasn't been reported to the public in that way.
No.
And you should have the confidence on your capital works projects to be fully and utterly transparent.
Yeah.
If you really trust the process and the system that you have in place. And the
You're not covering anything up.
There is nothing to cover up.
Yeah.
Because if we're buying more, it becomes a communication piece. Why are we buying more? What was the value we're going to create? Why it's good for the taxpayer? But what we do actually is we try to tell people nothing because we don't trust how that happens, and then the politicians at the top, maybe there's jobs on the line. But what we're noticing in Copenhagen is that shift. So
people love operational transparency. If somebody came out, like if you order Deliveroo, they give you an update every 5 minutes about where your driver is. Where's your rider? Your rider is 5 minutes away. Your rider is nearby. Your rider is ringing your doorbell. You're like, yay, I'm getting my sprout now, right? People love operational transparency. And even if something is late, they will actually tolerate it better because they've had the updates. And I think that what you're talking about there is, that's kind of my wheelhouse, is that communication piece. But the communication is not being honest because of the layers of chaos and the layers of the ballooning of things, and nobody really has one single story to tell about why this happened.
Because we don't know.
We don't know because there's so many stakeholders. It's so fragmented. Yeah.
So if you look, like I believe it was a KPMG that went in and did a report 3 years ago on why those reports should not be necessary, because the information flow
should be on the internet in the cloud.
It should already be
on a
there.
dashboard.
It should already be there.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so imagine we get to a position where we're able to have full transparency for anybody, not only on the project, but outside, to be able to look at the projects and go, geez, I'm curious, where are we at the moment? How much have we spent? How many square meters have we built? How much time have we left? When is the opening date? What's the latest news on this project?
And you could get that if you were delivering, a fit out in a building in town.
You should be able to get that from every single project you work on.
Yeah.
The challenge we have here is twofold, is that you really need to trust the process to be transparent, because if issues happen and you're not fully transparent and those issues aren't kind of fully, I would say, recognized and communicated, then people get distrust, and then people will lose their jobs.
They start being contractual when there's distrust.
And I think this is the revolutionary piece for construction.
Okay.
I think that if we can get to a place where all the stakeholders were fully transparent in our information, like when we do our cost estimates and cost plans, we share them with all the stakeholder groups around the table. And most clients go, absolutely, you don't tell the architect your budget. And I'm going, the architect is the one that knows the architecture the best. Why wouldn't we share our costs with them? Because they'll be able to go, but you've missed X, Y, and Z, or, oh, that's very good, but I would reduce or increase that rate. Why wouldn't you share it?
Yeah. Or I have an idea to value engineer that.
Yeah.
I actually went to a webinar the other day and I learned about this new product for the facade.
Let's try that.
Yeah.
And so that transparency, but in order to have transparency, you need to have standardization, because you need to have structure. It needs to be kind of correlated. It needs to be understood. It needs to be presented so people begin to understand what it is that they're looking at. All of that stuff needs to happen. But by sharing the information around the stakeholder groups, you get buy-in, but you also share the risk. So the risk of cost does not fall on the quantity surveyor, it falls on the project team.
Yes.
And that's key, because most cost managers...
Everyone's accountable.
Everybody's accountable, because it's a project. It's not you as an individual or you as an organisation, it's the project. And by having this collaborative approach, also you have a better relationship between the stakeholders. And so what we offer in terms of the cost management is that integrated, kind of digitized commercial approach. And we say integrated, we sit with the disciplines each week to talk about what information they're producing, models, specification, documents. So we're vetting the design information as it's being produced, not at the end of the gateway. And that's key to quality.
So do you have your own software then that has that dashboard?
So this is fundamental. What I hear from QSs is it's expensive to digitize.
Yes.
We have CostX.
Right.
That's all.
So it's a basic.
It's basic in the sense that a lot of commercials is driven by the client's needs.
Right.
But when we do model validation and model review, we don't have Revit licenses. We are not designers.
No.
Why would we buy 10,000
So tell me
euro
what
licenses?
CostX does. Does it pull all the data into a dashboard that I can rock up as a layperson and see where I am in the project?
So CostX really is an estimating tool.
Okay.
A BOQ production
Yeah.
software. And so we're able to import 3D models, map to our standard cost breakdown structure, which is ICMS.
Okay.
Use our rate libraries to price those cost estimates. And what that does for you is that you're building, at the early stages, you're building towards your bill of quantities using standard breakdown structure. And by the time you get to the detailed design stage, you've almost your BOQ produced. So actually, we don't produce a BOQ. We've been doing that for the last 9 months through the life cycle.
Yes.
And what that does is it removes that, I don't know how many weeks, on capital projects, it can be anything from 8, 12, 14 weeks to produce a BOQ. And we don't need that time anymore because we've been building towards that. So CostX helps us with that. But CostX is only the estimating tool.
Yeah.
And then you have to build your project commercials, and how do you report that to your client?
Yeah.
Some clients have systems like Procore.
Yeah.
Other clients they like to receive it on paper still, which is crazy.
Or they use Power BI or something and they build their own.
Our Power BI. So
Yeah.
some of our clients have a requirement for Power BI and dashboards.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about the clients is that some clients are quite mature and advanced and other clients aren't. So you can't rock in with all these dashboards and all this technology because they won't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So
there's a cultural piece, there's a behavioural piece.
and it's an education.
Yeah.
This is why it's a lifetime journey that we're on in terms of education.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a 9 out of 10 in terms of technology and a 9 out of 10 in terms of data analytics, and your client is a 1 out of 10,
Yeah.
you can't go with your 9 out of 10 information
Yeah.
because they won't understand it.
Yeah.
And then you go back to quality of communication. You can give them everything, but that's not going to guarantee that they understand what it is that you're saying to them.
They probably won't read it if they kind of, do you know what I mean? If you send them a load of stuff to read, they probably won't look at it because it's kind of like this is not something that I have control of or that I properly understand.
Yeah. And a lot of people think when we say digital QS, it automatically goes technology. What kind of systems they're using, but it's actually process.
Okay.
And it's the digital part is understanding how information is produced, not you with technologies going, look at all this great dashboards. It's actually understanding how information is produced and then how you can process that information as a QS. That's the digital piece.
Yeah.
But the key part is the communication. Again, if you send 1,000 pages to your client of a BOQ, you've done a great job, you're patting yourself in the back.
Yeah.
They've no idea what they're looking at.
No.
Where are the cost drivers? Where are the hot spots? Where are my risks? Where should I be really looking? What are you telling me? And so key to part of what we do in Kosmos is we focus heavily on the communication. Like simplified one-pagers, simplified instructions. This is what we're telling you in all these documents, but please look at this, this, and this. And that's one thing I think that our current structure in Ireland around how we procure quantity surveyors, we're missing. What I'm hearing in the marketplace, and I've been out of the system for quite some time, but what I hear is that clients buy in QS services at a certain point after the planning's approved, or they buy in a small portion pre-planning and then they buy the service from someone else post-planning or someone else again in execution. So who has the golden thread of commercials from inception to handover? Someone needs to own that. Singularity needs to own it. Because when you transfer the information, you also reduce its quality and understanding.
Okay. What about SCSI and bodies like this? What do they think of you? Are you a chartered surveyor, or do you have chartered surveyors on your team?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, absolutely. I work closely with the SCSI and have been for the last number of years. Noel Walsh, the head of cost management in the LDA, was chair of the BIM group. And then when he moved over to the LDA, I took over that for a few years. And we ended up stopping it, actually, because we weren't getting enough traction, I would say, across the industry. And the result of it was really that what we were saying to the guys in the SCSI, you need to lead it. And
but why were you not getting traction? Lack of marketing?
We did a thing called BIM Bites. The BIM group in the SCSI did it the first one was in 2021. There was 160 signed up and 150 arrived. This is online. So 160 QS signed up and 150 logged on that morning. That's the highest they've ever had. And so we did a series of 7 1-hour sessions over a number of weeks talking about BIM for QSs. It's still absolutely and utterly relevant. You can go on our YouTube channel and check it out. It starts with, well, what is BIM, right through to the granularity behind it. So what I'd say is the SCSI and the education institutions have a huge task ahead of them.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that they should be producing the leaders of tomorrow. So I'd be expecting QSs coming out of university going, what are you guys at? This is what you should be doing, not what you're doing now.
And is that what they're learning in college?
No.
Are they learning your way?
What we're finding is that it's still very traditional, because
Yeah.
the entire market is still looking for traditional QSs.
Yes.
Whereas what we're looking for is QSs coming out with real critical thinking, kind of innovative mindset,
Yeah.
curiosity, looking at what do we want to change here. And I do think that the educational system, because the QS discipline is bounded by standards, methods of measurement, contracts, processes, this is how we do it, that we lose our critical thinking actually in universities.
Oh, it wouldn't be encouraged.
Well, why would you question the standards that we've been working towards and teaching for the last I was going to say number of years,
yeah.
but it's decades.
Yeah.
And in reality, no, I believe, and this is very controversial, I don't think they're fit for purpose anymore. I think the method of measurement isn't fit for purpose because it's not how we design digitally.
So when there's cost overruns, who gets blamed usually?
So that's where the QS is always the bad guy in the room, right? Or bad girl in the room, because when they come in, they always bring the problem, right? And that's part of our discipline, is actually to bring the solution. Yeah. So we have a challenge, but here's the solution. Or here are the solutions. Choose one. But what would I say about cost overruns is cost overruns shouldn't be a surprise after 6 months.
They should be mitigated at the pre-construction phase.
Or even understood on that monthly roll-up of real change management focus.
Yeah.
And as I said to you, if you have 7,500 drawings on that project, there's no way you can manage all the bubbles and the stuff. It needs to be digital. It needs to be model first.
Data.
Drawings. It has to be. Otherwise, we will never change the industry. We will always continue to have children's hospitals. The challenges we have and the poor communication and the quote-unquote overspend, but we don't know if it's an overspend. Maybe we bought a hell of a lot of value.
Accuracy of data, are we comparing like with like? Are we actually building what we originally set out to build? Are we building something different?
The future for QS is communication management. Like they become the key to the marketing piece of construction, because they hold the data. So you talk about cost. We never like to share cost. We should be sharing that openly.
Create a narrative from the data. This is something I probably say about 6 times a day. You know, data is no good to me if I can't create a narrative from it. That's my job.
And also if you don't understand what it is you're saying. And if you don't understand what it's saying, how can you create a narrative from it? Other than that, I don't understand what it's saying.
Other than that, I'm looking at a load of figures. I'm looking at a load of numbers. Kosmos, tell me what it means. So we want to talk about investors, because ultimately, you know, we had Kevin Timoney he's chief economist with Davy on here a couple of weeks ago, and he said the money is flowing. The investors want to invest in Ireland, right? Which is great. Government bonds, I asked him to explain government bonds to me like I was 5 years old, which he did, and it was brilliant. And we are a place that they want to invest in, but we have to try and deliver certainty for them. Tell me about where the name Kosmos came from and how it delivers certainty for investors.
So when we started the business back in 2019 in my kitchen in Van Luce in Copenhagen, we were trying to come up with a name. And Kong, one of the partners, he's Vietnamese but has lived in Italy, Middle East and Denmark for over a decade now. He was going, why don't we call it Kosmos? I went, that sounds kind of cool. What the hell does that mean? You know, and he says, well, actually, the Greek name is order from chaos. And actually, isn't that what we're trying to provide for our clients? Order to the numbers and the chaos of the noise around them, and give clear communication and instruction. I went, that's kind of cool. let's run with Cosmos.
And that's how quickly decisions were made.
Yeah. Order from chaos. Let's go with it. Boom. There was another, and this is a funny part. There was why don't we call it Cosmos? And it was I think what he said was more than just cost. And I was kind of going, Cosmos, order from chaos, or Cosmos, more than just cost. I'll go with the first one, please. But that's where it originated from, and I thought it was very fitting to what we're trying to do, because the chaos that's created in projects fundamentally is down to how the project is set up, organized, and eventually designed and procured. And if you can really remove all the noise and increase the quality in that process, then what you get as a product from a client perspective at the end is super high quality. Really what we want for the industry is people to enjoy it. We want to change the culture and change what I call kind of the outward view of construction. Everybody looks at it as dirty and it's really hard hat and boots still, but actually it's not. It's technology and it's strategy and it's a whole host of other kind of things. So if we really need to kind of increase the number of people coming into the industry, we have to change the industry. And the way to change the industry is to change project delivery so it really becomes enjoyable for people. And it only becomes enjoyable for people if the project is a success.
And what about in kind of, the word they always talk about VUCA now, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. We've had global pandemic, we've had Ukrainian war, we've had Iran war. There are constantly things coming in from left field and right field and
everywhere,
field. Yeah. The quantum field.
Yeah.
What, how you're meeting an investor for a coffee to talk about the service that you provide and how it can deliver certainty for him. What would you say to him if he asked you that question about VUCA? Yeah,
but that's always going to exist on a project. That's just natural. When you put a bunch of people with different opinions in a room, you're going to create that volatility and uncertainty and everything. It's just natural. So how do you then kind of work within that environment? And I think, as I mentioned before, standardization and transparency around what it is that you want to achieve as a client is key. And when you go, well, what do I want to achieve? I want to achieve project success. I want to deliver it on time, on budget, to the quality that I've signed up to.
And get my return on investment.
And return on investment. But the thing about it is that can't happen naturally. There's an effort associated with achieving that.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You need stakeholders and support and advisors to make sure that is achieved. And like certainty, and this is the thing about it, when you set the budget at the beginning, it's probably not the figure that you're going to end up in reality. This is why cost doesn't really matter. It's really about management of communication information. As the project evolves, it goes like this. It just goes like this, up, down, in, out, up, down, in, out. What you as a consultant need to do is to keep the narrative straight. So it's okay if it goes up. It's okay, because our strategy to bring it back down is this. Mm-hmm. It's okay if it goes down. It's always okay if it goes down. But our strategy is this kind of equilibrium, this center line of calm right through the project life cycle. That's our role in reality. Our role is not to just report that we have a mess. Our role is actually to manage decision making around the entire stakeholder group so we achieve this equilibrium. And I think that's it's fundamental to understand that as a client and an organization, that it takes management, and we always talk about the integrated, collaborative commercial management process. Integrated, collaborative. Everybody has to be working together because, as we mentioned earlier on, everybody has responsibility for the cost outcome. Everybody has responsibility for the project delivery. Everybody has responsibility for quality. It's not just you. It's not just me. And maybe that shift needs to happen a little bit more,
Well, the org chart needs to not be steps. The org chart needs to be integrated circles.
Absolutely. And the traditional org chart is gone anyway, in my view.
But they still go into tenders. They still are asked for.
That's what's expected. Imagine if you're working on this client side and a tender valuation, and you're used to seeing org charts in that hierarchy, and that's the way you want to see it, and then something else comes in and you don't understand it. That goes, what's this trying to tell me? That's a risk. I'll score that lower. But maybe the innovative piece of that was going to revolutionize your project and deliver success for you. but because you didn't
you're suspicious.
Yeah, you are, because
different.
it hasn't been communicated to you.
Yes.
You don't know what it means.
And that's marketing.
Absolutely, it's marketing and information sharing. And I think this is...
Information sharing is marketing.
That's at its core, I guess.
Yeah.
Isn't that what it is?
It's strategically getting information from one place to another to the people who need to know it.
The most, yeah. And I think that will be a very interesting approach. So when speaking to an investor like that, for example, and they're looking for certainty, you can't get certainty without process, in my view, and you can't get process without right stakeholder groups and understanding it, and you can't manage information without digitization. And we come all the way back to BIM and standardization and ICMS from a commercial perspective, but also strengthening the client side. So if the investor is looking for certainty, there's only one way to deliver the project, and it's this for that investor, depending on what it is they want to do, of course. It's this process. So if an investor, for example, if we talk about projects like public authority projects that are complex, not traditional housing or anything, because that's a rinse and repeat product, but complex ones like museums and stuff like that. Hospitals even. I'm of the opinion that it should always be a client-led design. And this is controversial now. It needs to be client-led design, because the client needs to make all decisions before you bring anybody in to build it. You can have early contractor involvement and involve the contractor as a consultant. Exactly. And then once you decide, go build.
Advise on constructability and all that,
And that's more partnering than it is a client-led design. But the client holds all the risk anyway, regardless of your contract. So why not really manage it? And then, like our housing and residential and all that, that's a rinse and repeat product. We know what we want, design and build, let the contractor run with that. Why are we getting involved from client side on it? What's the difference? Just give them the scope, the quality levels, all of that stuff, and let them run. That's the model we see in Denmark in residential. But they also try to design and build in hospitals, and it's a disaster, because the decisions, there's no point in the evolution where you stop making a decision because technology changes. The decisions always need to be changed, meaning they impact the project, meaning the fixed price that you thought you were buying doesn't really exist. And I think that's a key part, is that for investors looking for certainty is, well, you need standardization, you need to understand what the end game is, you need to work back from that in terms of what you want to put in for process, and you need to understand which procurement strategy suits you best for the product that you want to build. More effort and time needs to be put into that. And the cost is small in comparison to the cost of bad impact, poor efficiency, of chaos. Absolutely. Cost of chaos.
Right, so we've one more question. The other thing that investors want is they have ESG goals, they have carbon, CSRD, they have reporting goals, and that's, hopefully the EU will, won't do any further rowbacks on that stuff. So it's going to come back on the table again, and it is back on the table.
It's never really left, really. What it did, that rollback with CSRD 2 years ago, was really an impact from companies weren't ready because no one really believed it, and geopolitical. Trump and his belief around sustainability. The
reality show in the White House.
Exactly. But the this is an interesting topic, because we have been talking carbon now for probably 5 years, I'd say. Since 22, I'd say, maybe 4 years. And carbon is a currency in our view, whether it's the euro, the pound, the dollar, the Danish krone. Carbon is a currency also, because you base that currency on a basis of quantum, which is the same for cost. So actually, when you look at it, cost and carbon are the same. They're identical in terms of process, but they're also identical in terms of decision making, because now you need to have both to make a decision on change, on optioneering, on value engineering, on impact, on time. And we now need a new criteria that we procure as a client right through our value chain, right from the design team, the consultants, the contractor, the specialist contractor, the suppliers. We now need this other type of information. And where it differs slightly from cost is that cost is something we've been working with forever. So when you go, well, what's the unit price for a square meter of block work? It's this. But in that unit price, it includes the block, the labour, the temporary works. It includes
delivery in a lorry.
Delivery, lorry, production.
Yeah.
So all of the stuff that we're now breaking up for carbon,
Yeah.
we understand that for cost over hundreds and hundreds of years. It's going to take us ages, so we'll know the exact impact of carbon on that wall in that same kind of context.
Yes.
This is what's complicating carbon, is because of the granularity and the nuance of the first principles approach to calculating it.
Measuring it.
Yeah, exactly. But our view is that what will end up happening, and it's already happening, is carbon will become the key currency. Cost will be second, based on green financing. So when the likes of AIB are investing in new projects, they have a green requirement as well, to have green assets on their books. That's a requirement by them, the state, by whoever.
Shareholders.
Exactly. And so they will be looking for green projects to invest their green money in. But what they'll,
greenbacks.
Yeah, and what they'll need is, they'll need accuracy on information to make sure that they hit the targets that they set so that they can report further up. This is fundamentally shifting now what our key component is, our key denominator is. It's not the euro or the dollar anymore. It is tons of CO2, because the reports need to be accurate in order for everybody on the supply chain to achieve and report their targets. Whereas commercially, there was always a variable on it, and everybody was taking a piece off the top, but that's not happening anymore, because the owner of the carbon actually sits with the owner of the building. The supplier that produces the steel transfers the carbon to the contractor. Contractor doesn't own anything, by the way, because that all is owned by the project, and whoever owns the project owns the carbon. And the financing part of it is part of the green initiative by the investors. They don't actually own the carbon, but they have to invest in green, because that's where their money is coming from.
They have to count it.
They have to understand it.
Report on it.
They have to understand it. How much carbon impact do we have in our investment? But they don't actually own the carbon. The carbon's owned by the building asset owner. So this is fundamentally going to change real estate, actually, in our opinion. The thing is that as green financing grows and quote-unquote dirty financing reduces, green financing becomes key. But part of green financing is information. Accurate, digitized information. This is going to be fundamental for the investor to be able to procure this information down along the supply chain, for the investor to be able to collate that information in a structured way from a carbon, circular, well, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then in a categorized, standardized way, so it can feed into the ESG reports across all of their projects that they work on, all of their typologies. So we're back again to standardization.
So the Kosmos process that is integrated throughout the project, from I found a big field, I'm going to plug in Gas Networks Ireland and water, and I'm going to build something on it.
Yeah.
Hospital, a hotel, whatever, right? I'm going to appoint a lead AP.
Yeah.
I'm going to appoint maybe, I don't know, I have to get my BER.
Yeah.
I have to understand my kilowatt per square metre.
Yeah.
How does Kosmos help
Yeah.
with that piece?
Sure. So what you'll get from a lot of the public sector and corporates is that they'll have a corporate ESG strategy. What is it that we want to achieve by when? And that corporate ESG strategy will be for the entire business as a whole. The challenge we have in our industry at the moment is very few people can translate what that is into actual deliveries or deliverables through the supply chain on the projects. So that's what we do. We come in and we translate whatever that strategy is to whatever you now need on your project, to whatever you need to procure from your supply chain.
So
in a
again, you
structured,
started the
standardized way.
end goal.
The end goal is always ESG reporting.
Yes.
It's what information do we want?
Need to capture.
Exactly. And then you work back from there, and that's what you need to put in your tender documentation.
So not only, I mean, obviously you'd work closely with your lead, with your sustainability consultant, would you?
Well, we do to a certain degree, but this is what's interesting and puts us in a unique position, is that we're used to working with design teams who take the lead on cost in the Nordics. We understand their approach to it. And so right now, sustainability leads have also the responsibility for carbon, but they're not contract or commercial people. And carbon is only procurement. It's procurement. It's what are you buying from who and how are they reporting. It has nothing to do with sustainability. I'm really generalizing there now. So we get a lot of...
I love this.
It's got to do with contracts and procurement. That's all it is. It's just information. Now, the strategy around sustainability and circular and materials and embodied carbon, all of that is your sustainability strategy for sure.
Yes.
And each stakeholder owns a portion of that strategy. The design team need to decide which elements, materials are going to select in order to achieve your tons of CO2 per square metre, all of that lovely stuff. But
that's the global sustainability view.
Yeah.
But you're talking about carbon the same way that you're talking about euros.
It's identical. It's procuring it from the marketplace. And how do you do that? What do you write in your tenders? How do you evaluate it as part of your meet criteria? Do you have a carbon bill of quantities, for example? Does your contractor price your carbon BOQ? Does your contractor come back with value engineering options for your carbon? Do we now remove cost completely? And this comes around to our opening kind of statement where cost is not relevant anymore. And carbon becomes the key component of how we measure and analyse our tender prices. So we believe that this is...
Have you ever seen a tender that asks for that?
Not in that level of detail, except Copenhagen Metro. Copenhagen Metro carbon was key. 50% reduction on the previous Metro was key. And they evaluated the tender responses on it.
Is that being built now or is it done?
It's been built. This is the 4th and 5th Metro. So we're working on both of them, one on the client side, one on the contractor side. And carbon...
Is there a case study somewhere we can read about that?
I think you can go online and you can look at the Copenhagen Metro website and see...
Not on your website?
Carbon... No, we can't. You know, it's... technically we're under NDA, but we're also promoting this with the Metro Cellscape
this
in
new
conferences.
way. It's a new way. It is a new way. We might as well call it. It's a new way of doing it.
It's refocusing our objectives and what we want to measure and what do we consider critical and important for us as society, or also as us as an investor, client, all of that type of stuff. So I think our public authority, like there's going to be a wave of shift happening here. Once we prove the model on one public project, that will be the model for the entire public sector, because there's only one way to deliver success. It's not multiple. There's only one on projects. And you need to have that strategic approach, that process, that data, that procurement, that information. You need to understand what it is that you want as an outcome. Once we understand that, it will be the model that we deliver all projects on in the future.